Chosen one, listen closely. You are not here by accident, this moment is divinely orchestrated. If you've been feeling an unshakable sense that something is about to change, you're right. God is moving, and a wealth transfer is coming. But here's the truth, not everyone will receive it. God is releasing financial favor, new opportunities, and breakthroughs, but only for those who are spiritually ready. Some will recognize the signs and step forward in faith. Others will hesitate, allowing doubt to rob them of what was meant for them. Which one will you be? This is your warning, if you do not recognize the signs, you may miss it. Everything you've been experiencing, the struggles, the delays, the divine nudges, has been preparation. Now, the shift has begun. Today, I'm revealing 7 undeniable signs that a wealth transfer is coming to you. If you recognize even one, know that God is positioning you for something greater. Before we begin, declare your faith, comment below, I am ready for my wealth transfer. Let this be your first step toward what God is about to release in your life. Now, let's begin. Sign 1, Financial instability before breakthrough. If you've noticed an unusual shift in your financial situation, money disappearing faster than before, deals collapsing at the last moment, expenses piling up unexpectedly, you might be tempted to think you're under attack. It may feel like everything is working against you, like no matter how much effort you put in, something always seems to go wrong. But what if I told you that this is not a curse, it's a test? What if everything that feels like it's falling apart is actually falling into place? Before God releases a wealth transfer, He first removes everything built on weak foundations. This is a principle that has been repeated throughout history. When God is preparing to bless, He first allows a shaking. Not to destroy you, but to refine you. Not to take from you, but to make room for something greater. Many people misinterpret this phase, mistaking God's preparation for punishment. They see loss, hardship, and sudden instability as signs that things are getting worse, when in reality, it is a setup for something bigger. Look at Job. In a single moment, he lost everything, his wealth, his family, his security. It seemed like destruction, but it was actually a test. Job's story didn't end in suffering, it ended in double restoration. Everything he lost was returned to him in greater measure. What if Job had given up in the middle of his trial? What if he had mistaken the test for the end? He would have never stepped into the abundance God had already prepared for him. Now consider Joseph. He had a dream of greatness, a vision that God had given him of ruling a nation. But before that dream became a reality, he was thrown into a pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and imprisoned. If you had looked at his life during those years, you might have thought that he had been completely abandoned. Yet, every single setback was actually a stepping stone. Every loss positioned him closer to his promise. What looked like delay was actually divine preparation. This is how God works. He allows what is temporary to be shaken so that what is unshakable can remain. He removes what is holding you back, even if you don't realize it. When your finances suddenly become unstable, it is not a sign that you are doomed, it is a sign that you are on the brink of something new. But here's the key, how you respond in this moment will determine what happens next. Many people fail the test because they panic. They try to hold on tighter to what is slipping away. They make decisions based on fear rather than faith. They begin to question God instead of trusting Him. But look closely at what is happening. If your usual sources of income are drying up, if doors that once seemed reliable are now closing, if resources you depended on are no longer available, it might be because God doesn't want you to rely on them anymore. He is shifting your foundation, repositioning your life so that when the blessing comes, you are ready to handle it. You must ask yourself, what is God trying to teach me in this season? What is He redirecting me toward? Because when God allows a financial shaking, it means something new is about to be built. It is proof that your situation is not permanent, that change is coming. But you have to pass the test. This is the moment where faith is required. Will you allow temporary struggles to shake your trust in God, or will you stand firm, knowing that He is in control? Will you focus on what you have lost, or will you prepare for what is coming? Because those who remain steadfast, those who refuse to let fear dictate their actions, those who trust that God is working even in the uncertainty, those are the ones who will walk into the wealth transfer. But financial instability is just one of the signs. There is another key indicator that a shift is happening, an opportunity that appears out of nowhere, but feels far too big for you to handle. This is a moment that separates those who step into abundance from those who let fear hold them back. Let's talk about it. Sign 2, a massive opportunity that looks impossible. There comes a moment in your journey when an opportunity presents itself, one so unexpected, so overwhelming, and so much bigger than you imagined, that it feels impossible. It could be a new business idea that suddenly takes root in your heart, a promotion you never thought you were qualified for, or a divine connection that could change your entire future. You recognize that this opportunity could be a breakthrough, an answer to prayer. But almost immediately, doubt creeps in. The what-ifs begin to flood your mind. What if I fail? What if I'm not ready? What if I'm not qualified? What if I step forward and it all falls apart? Suddenly, what should feel like a blessing starts to feel like a burden, and fear tries to convince you to walk away. But here's the truth, this is not just an opportunity, it is a test. When God prepares to bless you, He does not simply drop the wealth transfer into your lap. Instead, He presents it in the form of a challenge, an open door that requires you to walk by faith, not by sight. Many people miss their moment because they assume that if something is from God, it should feel easy, that if a blessing is meant for them, it should come without obstacles or struggle. But that is not how God works. God's pattern is to disguise His greatest blessings as challenges that stretch your faith. Think about David. Before he was crowned king, before he stepped into his destiny, he was first sent into battle against a giant. To the natural eye, this looked like an impossible situation. A young shepherd boy, armed with nothing but a sling and 5 stones, was expected to take down an enemy warrior who had been trained for war since birth. It would have been easy for David to say, "This is too big for me. I'm not ready. Maybe someone else should do it." But David understood something that many people today still struggle with. When God places a challenge in front of you, it is not to defeat you, but to promote you. The same thing happened with the Israelites when they reached the edge of the promised land. God had already promised them abundance, a land flowing with milk and honey, a place where they would flourish. But when they arrived, they saw giants instead of promise. They saw walled cities instead of open doors. Fear took over their hearts, and instead of stepping forward in faith, they stepped back. They turned away from the very thing God had prepared for them. And because of that decision, an entire generation missed their breakthrough. They spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness because they were too afraid to take hold of what God had already given them. How many people today are doing the exact same thing? How many people are praying for financial breakthrough, for a life-changing opportunity, for a door to open, only to hesitate or walk away when God finally presents it? How many have allowed fear to rob them of the blessing that was meant for them? Here's what you need to understand, God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. If an opportunity feels bigger than you, it is because it is meant to be. God does not give small assignments to those He has called to great things. He is not looking for those who are already perfect, already prepared, already confident in their own ability. He is looking for those who will step forward in faith, trusting that He will equip them along the way. If you are facing an opportunity right now that seems impossible, that is your sign. That means God is stretching you, preparing you, and calling you to something greater. But here's the key, your response in this moment will determine what happens next. Will you step into what God has placed before you, even if it scares you? Will you trust that if He brought you to this moment, He will provide everything you need to succeed? Or will you hesitate, allowing fear and doubt to keep you from the very thing you prayed for? Some will step forward in faith, walking into their next level. Others will hold back, letting the opportunity pass them by, and wonder years later why things never changed. Which one will you be? But here's something most people don't realize: big opportunities require preparation, but sometimes, that preparation includes losing people along the way. Because before God can elevate you, He often removes those who are not meant to go where you are going. Let's talk about it. Sign 3: People leaving your life unexpectedly. One of the hardest and most confusing things to experience is the sudden loss of people you thought would always be in your life. These could be close friends who suddenly grow distant, mentors who stop guiding you, or even family members who no longer support your vision. Sometimes, it's even more painful: betrayal from someone you trusted deeply, someone you never imagined would turn their back on you. It feels personal, like something has gone wrong. But here's the truth: this is not a mistake, it is divine separation. When God is preparing to elevate you, not everyone can come with you. Some people are attached to your past, not your future. They were part of your journey for a season, but if they stayed, they would only hold you back. That's why, when a wealth transfer is on the horizon, you will notice people beginning to fade away. Relationships that once felt secure suddenly become shaky. Conversations that used to be uplifting feel draining. The people you once turned to for advice seem unavailable. At first, you may try to fix it, to hold on, to figure out what went wrong. But what if nothing went wrong? What if God is simply repositioning you for what's ahead? Abraham had to leave everything behind: his home, his family, his comfort, before God could bless him. If he had stayed where he was, he would have never stepped into the promise. Joseph's own brothers betrayed him, selling him into slavery. But what looked like rejection was actually redirection. Their betrayal pushed him into the very position that allowed him to become second in command over all of Egypt. If he had stayed with his brothers, he would have remained ordinary. Instead, he became a ruler. Even Jesus himself experienced this. Judas betrayed him. Peter denied him. His closest disciples abandoned him in his final moments. But their departure did not stop his purpose, it fulfilled it. You may not understand why people are leaving. It may hurt. But God knows things you don't. Some people cannot handle where He is taking you. Some were secretly jealous. Some would have spoken doubt over your dreams. Some were meant to teach you something, but their role in your life is now complete. Instead of questioning why they left, ask yourself, could this be God making room for something greater? The mistake many people make is chasing after what God is trying to remove. They beg people to stay. They cling to relationships that are no longer serving them. But when you hold on to what God is trying to take away, you delay what He is trying to bring in. If someone is meant to be in your life, they will be there. If they leave, trust that their exit is part of the plan. This is a test. Will you trust God's process, or will you fight against it? Will you believe that He knows what He's doing, or will you try to hold on to something that is already gone? If you are experiencing unexpected loss in relationships, know that it is not rejection, it is preparation. Some people were only meant to be part of your journey for a season, and their departure is proof that you are stepping into a new level. But separation is only one part of the preparation process. Because as God is clearing space in your life, He is also watching to see how you respond to another test, one that many people fail. And that test is this: will you give before you receive? Sign 4: God asks you to give before you receive. One of the most challenging and unexpected tests that comes before a wealth transfer is the call to give. You've been praying for increase, asking God to open doors, to provide more, to bring financial breakthroughs into your life. You're expecting to receive, but then, God asks you to release something instead. It might be a financial seed, it might be an act of service, it might be a business idea that He asks you to surrender, or even a relationship or opportunity you thought was necessary for your success. Suddenly, God places a demand on something you hold dear, and in that moment, your faith is tested. This is where many people fail. Instead of stepping forward in faith, they allow fear to creep in. Thoughts like, if I give this, what will I have left? What if I never get it back? What if I need this later? What if this is all I have? Begin to take over. The natural reaction is to hold on tighter, to preserve what little they have left. But here's what you need to understand, in God's kingdom, giving always comes before abundance. The world teaches us to save, to accumulate, to store up as much as possible. But God's way is different. He teaches us to release, to trust, to sow, because only what is sown can multiply. This principle is seen throughout Scripture. Every major breakthrough is preceded by a test of obedience in giving. Before God releases a wealth transfer, before He pours out increase, He watches to see, can you be trusted with what you already have? Will you hold on in fear, or will you trust that He is your provider? Look at the widow of Zarephath. She had nothing left, just a handful of flour and a little oil. She had already accepted her fate. She was preparing her last meal for herself and her son, expecting to eat it and die. And then God sent the prophet Elijah to her. Imagine the weight of the request. Elijah told her to make him food first. She barely had enough for herself, and now she was being asked to give away the very last of what she had. To the natural mind, this request seemed absurd. But here's what she didn't know. Her obedience in that moment was the key to unlocking supernatural provision. When she gave out of her lack, her flour and oil never ran out. What should have been her last meal became the beginning of a divine season of abundance. Consider Abraham. God promised him a son, and after years of waiting, Isaac was finally born. Abraham loved Isaac dearly. He was the fulfillment of everything Abraham had believed for. And then came the test. God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. Imagine the weight of that moment. The very thing he prayed for, the promise he had waited years to receive, now God was asking him to lay it down. This wasn't just about obedience, this was about trust. Did Abraham trust the giver more than the gift? Did he believe that God was still faithful, even when the blessing was on the altar? Abraham chose to obey. He took Isaac up the mountain, fully prepared to surrender what he loved most. But at the very last moment, God provided the ram in the thicket. Not only was Isaac spared, but because Abraham passed the test, he became the father of many nations. God had something much bigger in store for him, but before he could release it, he needed to know that Abraham trusted him completely. This is the same principle at work today. What you release determines what you receive. If you hold on to something in fear, it remains small, limited, confined to your own ability to sustain it. But when you place it in God's hands, it multiplies beyond what you could ever imagine. Many people pray for financial increase, but when God prompts them to give, they hesitate. They ask for open doors, but when He asks them to serve first, they resist. They want elevation, but when He asks them to trust Him in an uncomfortable transition, they shrink back. They don't realize that their obedience in giving is the key to unlocking the next level. God never asks you to give because He wants to take from you, He asks because He has something greater waiting for you. But first, He needs to know, will you trust me? If God is prompting you to release something right now, whether it's finances, time, a resource, or even a dream, don't resist. Your breakthrough is always tied to your obedience. The wealth transfer that is coming to your life will require radical faith. The kind of faith that says, God, I trust you with everything I have, even when I don't understand. Even when it feels like I have nothing left. Even when it looks like I'm giving away the very thing I need. And here's the most powerful part, once you pass this test, your mindset will begin to shift. You will no longer see money, success, or opportunities the same way. Instead of just wanting wealth, you will begin to crave wisdom. Because true increase doesn't just come from receiving more, it comes from knowing how to manage what God gives you. And that, chosen one, is the next sign of a wealth transfer. Not just financial increase, but the sudden hunger for wisdom, knowledge, and stewardship. Because before God releases abundance, He first teaches His people how to handle it. Let's talk about it. Sign 5, a sudden desire to gain wisdom about wealth. There comes a moment when your entire relationship with money shifts. You no longer see it as something to simply earn and spend, you begin to understand that wealth is a responsibility, not just a resource. Instead of focusing on how much money you have, you start thinking about how you manage what you already have. You stop looking for quick fixes and begin seeking lasting financial knowledge. You start asking deeper questions. How does wealth really work? What are God's principles for financial increase? How do I build something sustainable instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck? How do I multiply my resources and ensure that money works for me, rather than me constantly working for money? This shift in thinking is not a coincidence, it's a divine preparation. Before God releases wealth into your hands, He first releases wisdom into your mind. This is how He operates. He teaches before He transfers. He increases your understanding before He increases your bank account. He ensures that before you receive a blessing, you have the knowledge to manage it well. Many people fail to recognize this step. They pray for financial breakthroughs, but they never take the time to prepare themselves to handle the very thing they are asking for. They want more money, but they don't want more wisdom. And this is why so many people struggle financially, not because God isn't willing to bless them, but because they are not ready to sustain the blessing. God is not just looking for people to receive wealth, He is looking for people who are prepared to steward it for His glory. Look at Solomon. When given the opportunity to ask God for anything, he didn't ask for riches, fame, or success. He asked for wisdom. And because he sought wisdom first, God gave him everything else as well. Solomon became the wealthiest king in history, not because he chased after money, but because he pursued understanding. This is a kingdom principle: wealth follows wisdom. If you chase money without knowledge, you will lose both. But if you chase wisdom, money will follow. Think about people who win the lottery. Overnight, they go from struggling to having millions. And yet, studies show that the majority of lottery winners end up broke within a few years. Why? Because money without wisdom is temporary. They received wealth, but they never learned how to manage it. They had increase, but they didn't have the discipline to maintain it. This is why God will not release a financial blessing until He sees that you are ready to handle it. If you suddenly feel a deep urge to learn more about financial wisdom, this is not random. If you've started seeking knowledge about investing, saving, business, or breaking generational cycles of poverty, this is a divine sign that you are being positioned for increase. You might find yourself drawn to books about financial literacy, studying biblical principles of money, listening to sermons about wealth stewardship, or feeling convicted about old financial habits. You might suddenly become more mindful about where your money is going and start making intentional decisions about budgeting and saving. These are all signs that your mindset is shifting, and when the mindset shifts, the season shifts. God is preparing you to not just receive wealth, but to sustain it, grow it, and use it wisely. Many people think they are waiting on God to bless them, but in reality, God is waiting on them to be ready. He is not holding back your blessing, He is making sure that when it comes, you will not lose it. This season of wisdom is crucial. It is the difference between a temporary financial increase and a lasting generational shift. Because God does not just want to bless you, He wants to use you as a vessel to bless others. He is teaching you how to manage wealth so that when the wealth transfer happens, you won't squander it like those who were unprepared. But here's where it gets powerful. Once wisdom is in place, supernatural confirmations begin to appear. You will start seeing divine alignments, doors opening, opportunities arising, and resources flowing into your life in ways that don't make sense. People will show up at the right time, ideas will come together effortlessly, and unexpected breakthroughs will happen. And that, chosen one, is the next sign of a coming wealth transfer. When things begin to align supernaturally, and you realize that God is orchestrating something far bigger than you imagined. Sign 6, supernatural confirmations appearing everywhere. There comes a moment when everything in your life begins to align in ways that defy logic. The doors that were once locked shut suddenly swing open. Opportunities you never expected begin to appear. The people, connections, and resources you need begin to show up at precisely the right time. What once felt like an uphill battle now feels as if invisible hands are moving pieces into place just for you. It is as if the puzzle pieces that never seemed to fit before are suddenly coming together, forming a picture that is so clear, so undeniable, that you know deep down, this is God. At first, it may feel surreal. You might even question whether it is real, whether it is too good to be true. But this is not luck. This is not coincidence. This is divine orchestration. When God is preparing you for a wealth transfer, He moves with precision. He aligns every detail, every circumstance, every divine connection to position you exactly where you need to be at exactly the right moment. But here is where most people miss it: they ignore the signs. Instead of stepping forward in faith, they hesitate. They assume it is just random luck or a fleeting moment of favor. Instead of recognizing the divine alignment, they begin to doubt themselves, asking, "Am I really ready for this? Is this really happening for me?" And because they hesitate, they miss their window of opportunity. Look at Joseph. His life seemed like one disaster after another. His own brothers betrayed him and sold him into slavery. He was falsely accused and thrown into prison for a crime he didn't commit. For years, it seemed like his life was moving further and further away from the dream God had given him. But what looked like setbacks were actually setups. Had Joseph never been betrayed, he would have never been sold into Egypt. Had he never been falsely accused, he would have never been put in Pharaoh's prison. Had he never been in prison, he would have never interpreted the dream that led him to the palace. Everything was aligning for his moment of breakthrough. And when that moment came, it happened suddenly. In a single day, Joseph went from a forgotten prisoner to the second most powerful man in Egypt. In a moment, he stepped into his wealth transfer. The famine that should have destroyed him became the very thing that made him ruler over the nation's resources. His suffering had prepared him for his elevation. This is how God works. When a wealth transfer is near, things begin to align supernaturally. You will start seeing repeated confirmations, signs that keep appearing in your life. The right people will be drawn to you. Doors that you never even knocked on will open. Ideas will start flowing effortlessly. The very thing you struggled to obtain for years will suddenly be within reach. God will make it clear that your season is shifting. But here's the danger. Most people miss their moment because they are too afraid to move. When the opportunity appears, they hesitate. When the confirmation comes, they question it. They second-guess what God is doing. Instead of recognizing the open door, they allow fear to hold them back. You must understand, when God moves, He expects you to move. He does not show you the signs for you to stand still. He does not open doors for you to walk away in doubt. He is calling you to step forward. When Pharaoh called for Joseph, he did not hesitate. He stepped into the moment God had prepared for him. He did not say, "Let me pray about it first. Let me wait until I feel ready." He recognized the sign and moved immediately. That is why he received the wealth transfer. The same principle applies to you. If you are experiencing supernatural confirmations, if opportunities are aligning, if divine connections are appearing, if doors are opening, this is your sign. This is God's way of telling you, it's time. But here's what you must know: before every breakthrough, there is always one final challenge. Right before the shift happens, pressure increases. Right before the blessing, resistance intensifies. It is always the darkest before the dawn. Right when you think everything is about to come together, you will experience the greatest spiritual attack. It will feel as if everything is trying to stop you. But this is not a sign to turn back, it is a sign that you are closer than ever. And that, chosen one, is the final and most important sign that a wealth transfer is about to happen, the moment of greatest opposition before the breakthrough. Will you recognize it? Will you press forward? Or will you let fear and pressure make you step away from what God has already prepared for you? Sign 7. Intense pressure right before breakthrough. Right before a major breakthrough, everything feels like it's getting harder. Instead of seeing the reward, you face unexpected resistance. Instead of stepping into ease, you encounter challenges that test you at every level. The pressure increases, the opposition grows stronger, and doubt begins whispering in your ear, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should just give up. This is not a coincidence, this is the final test. Whenever God is about to elevate someone, whenever He is about to release a wealth transfer, there is always an intense moment of pressure right before the shift. It is a critical moment, a defining season where everything in your spirit tells you that something is about to change, but right before it does, things seem to fall apart. This is the point where most people give up. They assume that because things are getting harder, they must be going the wrong way. They mistake the struggle for a sign that they should turn back, when in reality, the struggle is proof that they are closer than ever. Look at Moses and the Israelites. After years of oppression, after miraculous signs and wonders, they were finally on the brink of freedom. But what happened next? They found themselves trapped at the Red Sea. Behind them, Pharaoh's army was closing in, ready to take them back into captivity. In front of them was an impassable body of water. It seemed impossible. It seemed like the end. But it was actually the moment before their greatest breakthrough. In that moment of extreme pressure, when everything looked hopeless, God made a way where there was no way. The sea parted, the Israelites walked through on dry ground, and their enemies were defeated once and for all. The same thing happened with Daniel. He had remained faithful to God, he had walked in integrity, and yet, right before his promotion, he was thrown into the lion's den. The very night before his breakthrough was his most intense trial. The pressure was at its highest. The threat was real. But what happened? God shut the mouths of the lions. And the next day, Daniel was lifted into a higher position of influence and favor. Even Jesus himself faced this principle. Before his greatest victory, the resurrection, he had to endure the cross. Right before the fulfillment of his mission, he was betrayed, mocked, beaten, and crucified. His darkest moment came right before the greatest breakthrough in history. This is the pattern of breakthrough. The greatest pressure comes right before the promise. The biggest resistance comes right before the release. This is why so many people quit too soon. They don't realize that the very thing they are praying for is on the other side of the pressure. They walk away when they are just one step away. The enemy knows when your blessing is near. He can sense the shift before you see it. That is why the moment you get closest, he throws everything at you: doubt, distractions, delays, fear, frustration. He wants you to give up. He wants you to think that the obstacles mean God isn't with you. But that is the greatest deception. If you are facing overwhelming resistance right now, if it feels like you are being tested in every way, do not turn back. This is confirmation that you are on the verge of something great. The pressure is not there to break you, it is there to prepare you. It is sharpening your faith, proving your endurance, and positioning you for what's next. This is your defining moment. You have come too far to quit now. The very thing you have been waiting for, the wealth transfer, the breakthrough, the open doors, it is closer than you think. The enemy would not be fighting this hard if there wasn't something massive on the other side. Stand firm. Press through. Keep moving forward. Because the resistance you feel today is proof that your breakthrough is already on the way. Seeing the signs is only the first step. Many people recognize them, they feel the shift, they sense that something is happening, but they fail to act. They wait, they hesitate, they overanalyze, and in the end, they miss their moment. Throughout history, God has given clear signs of breakthrough, but not everyone steps into the blessing. The Israelites saw the promised land, they stood at the edge of everything God had promised them, but because of doubt, because of fear, they turned back. An entire generation missed out, not because God didn't want to bless them, but because they refused to step forward when the moment came. The rich young ruler had an invitation to follow Jesus, to walk into the fullness of purpose, but he walked away because he was unwilling to let go of what he already had. God does not just reward those who see, he rewards those who move. If he shows you a door, he expects you to walk through it. If he removes someone from your life, he expects you to let them go. If he places you in a test, he expects you to pass it. The wealth transfer is coming, but it is not for those who are passive. It is for those who are prepared, positioned, and ready to act. Positioning yourself for a wealth transfer requires more than just waiting, it requires obedience, preparation, and faith-based decision-making. God has already revealed areas in your life where action is required. Maybe he has told you to sow a seed, to release something, to take a step in faith. Maybe he has been nudging you toward gaining financial wisdom, stewarding what you already have, breaking unhealthy habits, or cutting ties with distractions that are holding you back. Many people pray for financial increase, but they never prepare themselves to receive it. They ask for more but mismanage what they already have. They wait for opportunities but ignore the wisdom that God is already providing. Faith without action is dead. The missing ingredient for most people is not desire, it is action. They want the blessing, they pray for the breakthrough, but they don't move when the opportunity comes. This is where the difference is made. Some will hear this message, feel convicted, and do nothing. Others will recognize that this is their moment, their call to step forward, their invitation to finally walk into the life that God has prepared for them. Which one will you be? This is your moment of truth. You have seen the signs. You have felt the shifts. Now it is time to move. Those who hesitate will look back in regret, wondering what could have been. Those who step forward in faith will walk into the destiny God has set before them. If you are ready to take hold of what God has promised you, declare it now, I am stepping into my breakthrough. Let this be your statement of faith, your declaration that you are ready to receive everything God has for you. And if this message has blessed you, if you feel led to support this ministry in spreading God's word, consider sending a super thanks. Your support allows us to continue creating content that empowers and equips believers like you. May God bless you abundantly as you walk in obedience, position yourself for increase, and step boldly into the wealth transfer He has already prepared for you. Your breakthrough is near, now is the time to act. God bless.